Chapter 5 Development. Over the rest of the week and the following break, Sana trained and danced and feigned ill every time Annalisa called her. With how worn out she was making herself, it wasn't hard. Constructs remained an impossibility, and cloud control was uncoordinated, but calling the bots into and out of hiding became as easy as making a wish, and another limiter had fallen away. Even her mother couldn't argue when she declared herself ready for school. She hadn't realized how stressful it would be. Makeup tests aside, every time someone came close to touching her, she felt her nerves spike. It was ridiculous. Even if someone did get stung, she could play it off as static shock. Nobody should get hurt or even hear the buzz, which was quieter than the headache-inducing fluorescent lights overhead, but that didn't stop her from having an internal freak-out. Annalisa slid into her usual seat. Her long, copper-colored braids swayed behind her, and she promptly dropped a Tupperware container in front of Sana. "Feeling better?" she asked. She always did this when Sana was sick enough to stay home from school. The gesture and her presence drew Sana out of her own head. Not for the first time, she felt guilty. They'd had plans to hang out over spring break. "Never better," she chirped as she cracked open the lid, "though I don't think I'll be eating takeout from that place ever again. Ooh, checkerboards. Thanks, Lee." She picked one of the 3x3 squares out of the container and pushed the box over. Lisa took one, then slid the box back. "Cheers," she said. They tapped the cookies together and dug in. If Sana had been expecting her to keep mum about the biggest piece of supervillain news to hit Calabria since Pulse's debut and the subsequent destruction of the local car dealership, she'd have been sorely mistaken. The girl hadn't even finished her cookie before she said, "So I don't know if you heard about this while you were puking your guts out, but somebody murdered Lord Static." Sana rolled her eyes. "I was sick, not dead. And I suspect even the dead know that by now. It's been top news for, 2 weeks? It'll be another 2 before more interesting news takes its place." "More interesting? Sana, one of the supervillains that's been plaguing the city for years was murdered, and nobody knows who did it. What could possibly be more interesting than that?" "It'll stop being interesting as it gets old. Might pick up again if the killer gets caught." She finished her treat and felt the urge to fiddle with her jewelry, but today's piece was a barrette, so she flexed her hands instead. Lisa caught on. Of course she did. "Hey, are you okay? You hardly ever need more than one Band-Aid at a time anymore. What happened?" "Oh, that." She gave her more injured hand to the girl, who took it and examined it before flipping it over. Sana let her. "I was still recovering, but I wanted to work. Thought I could handle it. They're not bad as far as glass cuts go. Deep enough to hurt and bleed, too shallow to scar. They were more embarrassing than anything. Attempts to use the bots to sift through glass and hand over pieces were on hold for the foreseeable future. Other hand, I swear, Son, that hobby of yours is going to wind up with you losing a finger one of these days. You don't complain when I give you the end results." Sana gave the other hand up easily. "The sun catchers are pretty, but that doesn't mean I like you turning your hands into patty meat to make them. I just find something worse if anyone made me stop." "True." Apparently satisfied, Lisa gave Sana's hands back. "But you say that as if anyone could stop you once you find something you love. Don't act like you aren't equally obsessed with that flute of yours." "Hey, I resemble that remark." The two fell into laughter, and Sana's spirit felt lighter than it had since Lord Static bled out under her hands. It reaffirmed for her that Annalisa could never know about what had happened that day. Sana's newly compromised heart wouldn't be able to bear it, even if their friendship could. The bell saved her from getting run over by that train of thought, and she took her place at Lisa's side. Banter carried her to the point where they split, and even the tedium of algebra couldn't bring her mood down that much. She hadn't studied for the pop quiz that got sprung, but in her defense, she'd had more important things to worry about. She didn't remember much of it, too panicked, so the grade for that was something to look forward to later. Bio and health passed in a haze of boredom. She might have slept through part of global history. She definitely slept through study hall, and the French lecture went in one ear and out the other. Needless to say, by the time lunch rolled around, she was ready to throw in the towel. Lisa didn't seem to be in better straits. 10 minutes of aimless chatter perked both of them up somewhat, but that could have just as easily been the blood sugar boost. Sana pulled out her phone to check the news with one hand and held a checkerboard cookie with the other. Lisa leaned over to see the screen better, so Sana placed it on the table, propped it against her lunchbox, and slid it over to rest between them. Lisa took over from there. "Traffic report?" Sana asked. Lisa rolled her eyes. "Even the weather's more fun than the traffic report. The weather doesn't tell me which route I need to take home to avoid being crushed or twisting my ankle on debris. Traffic report, please." "Oh, lady, you're older than me, and don't you forget it." "I can't, you never let me." She laughed at that and opened the traffic report. Sana shuffled closer on the cheap bench seating until their arms were pressed together, then scrolled through until she hit the closed roads section. Her brows furrowed. "Is it longer than normal, or am I imagining things?" "Why are you asking me? I already told you the traffic report's boring." She looked anyway. "I guess. Probably nothing. Death of a public super puts a snag in a lot of operations." "He was a super villain. I'd be rebuilding as fast as I could now that one of the local natural disasters is out of commission." She pushed her juice box toward Lisa, who did the same. "Doesn't mean the rest aren't causing problems." "Fair point." She took a drag from the box. "I guess with the cops distracted by the murderer and one less plot clashing, there would be a golden opportunity to cause mayhem." Lisa nodded sagely. "I would, especially since Lord Static's killer has vanished. Hasn't taken his place in the ring, so it's one less competitor till he comes out of hiding." "I don't see why he's hiding in the first place." Lisa rubbed the fabric of her jacket sleeve between her fingers. "Lord Static was murdered by a super, wasn't he? He'd have to be. You need a super to kill a super, and that goes double for catching." She thought of red eyes and black fur and felt a bit sick, so she ate a wedge of mandarin orange for the sweetness. "The CPD doesn't even have the power to detain flight risk, and he's a glorified acrobat with a homicidal streak. I can't see them catching someone with the power to off someone like Lord Static." "Don't let Jeremy hear you say that. He spent all week before break talking about how his dad's the key member of the investigative team." "Really? Detective Valentin?" Sana shook her head in disbelief. "The guy does anti-drug and anti-drunk driving assemblies. I can't picture him on a super hunting task force. And how do you know what Jeremy's been talking about?" The half-hearted glare Lisa shot in her direction had her throwing up her hands. "I'm just saying." Her friend rolled her eyes, swallowed the rest of her sandwich in one bite, and dragged her out of her seat by her wrist. She flailed in exaggerated confusion and was dutifully ignored, in favor of an explanation. "I have to talk to somebody when you're out dying. Jeremy's fun, and he knows police gossip. Come on, he'll get you caught up. Hey, hold on, I haven't finished my food yet." A minute later, Sana was standing by Jeremy's table, tomato soup in hand. She took a drink of the thick liquid and waited for Lisa to take charge. She did. "Hi, Jeremy. Any news from your old man?" "I just finished telling people the chief gave in and called for federal assistance. Nothing else is new." He was a tall boy, Lisa's height or taller, and muscular from playing tennis. His status as a junior gave him social clout among the freshmen, and his willingness to chat about crime news made him popular with everybody else. From what Sana had seen, he was nice enough, but Lisa knew him better than she did. Speaking of Lisa, she'd tug Sana forward. "Cool, then you have time to catch Sana up, if you don't mind." They locked eyes. He gave her an eyebrow, she gave him a shrug, and took another sip of her soup. He shrugged back and spilled the beans. The most interesting bits of information Sana gleaned were what he didn't say. The witness's existence was being kept under wraps. Jeremy only knew that a breakthrough had come in the day before the death, but the nature of the breakthrough was unknown, and the lead had fizzled out. The vanishing bots were a secret too, as was the exact cause of death. Other little details were missing too, but those were the big ones. Sana was careful to react appropriately to his tales. It wasn't hard, she just had to be politely interested and occasionally snarky. Lisa acted as a buffer, which helped. After lunch, it was English, then gym. English was boring, but at least the poetry unit was over. Gym was a whole different ballgame, pun intended. Changing was fine, and she tied the jacket around her waist. Nobody batted an eye when she walked out and took her place next to Lisa. Nobody except Coach Blake, anyway. The coach was a large, heavy-set man with short gray hair and a shorter temper. Students lived in fear of the man. Sana was no exception. He stomped up to her, and his face was set in a deeper scowl than usual. "Take your jacket off. It's a safety hazard." "Can't I keep it, Coach?" Sana pleaded. She made herself seem as small and pitiful as she could. It stung her ego, but it was better than a stroke. He remained firm. If anything, the lines in his forehead deepened, and he crossed his arms. "It'll fall off during class. I'm not going to have someone trip over it and break their face. Go put it in your locker." Sana opened her mouth to protest, saw the coach's face, and turned on her heel. The students who'd assembled watched her go. She felt their stares boring into her back. She'd never been more grateful that her corner of the locker room was in the back and well separated from anyone else. She took the jacket off and shook it. "Look, you and I both know my brain's gonna implode if I get too far away from you, and I'm pretty sure neither of us want that, so you gotta work with me here," she hissed. "Give me something I can hide." It disintegrated under her hands. She panicked, but it reformed just as quickly into an overlarge t-shirt with a ponytail holder tying back the excess fabric at the bottom, a pair of sweatbands, a headband, sneakers, and a pair of socks. All of the items buzzed in her hands and were lighter than they should be, exactly like her jacket. Sana was left holding the clothes, her surprise painted on her face. "That works. Thanks," she said, unsure what she was expecting. Why wouldn't the bots be able to make different disguises? Such a feature would only be practical. She changed and was back in line with 2 names before her own was to be called. Lisa wrinkled her nose at her, and Sana gave a one-shoulder shrug in response. Dodgeball was the game the coach decided on. Sana didn't hate the game, but it wasn't her favorite either. Just half an hour and she'd be free. Colorful foam balls that couldn't have been less aerodynamic if they'd been designed that way flew, for lack of a better term, through the air. Sana danced away from them with more grace than she would have 2 weeks ago. She lasted longer than usual, but calculating trajectories had never been her strong suit, and a ball clipped her side. She headed to the bleachers without complaint and waited for someone on her team to catch a ball so everyone would be let back in. Nobody managed it before the coach called them in to change. Sana waited until the room was mostly cleared out before swapping out the bots, then made a beeline for her locker. She'd packed up everything when Lisa came up to her. That was normal, but Jeremy's presence behind her was not. Sana gave them a grin and turned to walk out. "Hey, wait!" Annalisa caught Sana's arm and positioned herself at her side. "I'll walk you home. Do we have something planned?" At the sight of the panic on her friend's face, Lisa shook her head in reassurance. "It's not safe for you to walk the streets alone. Stick with me and Jeremy. We'll go with you. Then he'll take me home." Stunned silence met that proclamation. Lisa pushed. "It'll make me feel better, and he went with me last Friday. He's already agreed to take you too." "What? No way. What the hell, Lisa?" Sana jerked her arm free. "I've been fine on that roof for years. Kids don't get hurt, remember? One of the people who enforced that rule is dead. The rest aren't focused on upholding it at the moment or keeping the non-super criminals in line. If you go off on your own, you're going to get mugged," Lisa pleaded. "For my own peace of mind, just let me tag along for a few days." It wouldn't hurt anything, but her pride rankled. Her voice rose above the clamor of the lobby. "I can handle a mugger, and I'll call you when I get home if you want. You don't have to baby me, Lisa." "I'm not babying you. I'm keeping an eye out for you." "Same difference." "I disagree." Gah! Sana spun around and jumped backwards, straight into Lisa, who caught her around the waist, lifted her off the ground without losing momentum, and carried her straight out the doors. This didn't alarm her new cargo, who glared at the boy. The look's potency was undercut by the hand clutching her heart. Cheese and rice, don't do that, you jerk. Sorry. Jeremy did appear contrite, so Sana let him off the hook. Annalisa wasn't so lucky. Lee put me down. Nah. She tossed a smug grin down at her passenger, who growled and shoved a hand in her face. She laughed, wobbled, and leaned against Jeremy so she wouldn't fall over. The look of confusion on his face was pure gold, but he played along, catching her shoulders to stabilize her. They were on the sidewalk now, and when they made a right instead of a left in front of the school, Sana realized the game. Oi! Lisa laughed like a mad scientist, head thrown back and everything. Can't stop me now. I am not being carried back to my own house. Nah, just far enough that it's not worth fighting me anymore. Sana leaned back and went limp, which did precisely nothing to her friend. You're the worst. I know. Give it till we're past the bank, or my arms get tired. You have described me as, quote, easier to haul around than a medium-sized dog. I don't think your arms can get tired from carrying me anymore. A year ago, she and Sana had tested how far she could toss her. They'd managed a solid 5.5 feet before calling it quits. Lisa had only gotten stronger since. Too much of any exercise can start to hurt. Point. It was sunny and warm, and Lisa's body was pushing it towards hot. The arms around Sana's waist were strong and steady without being restrictive. If Sana truly wanted out, all she'd have to do was wiggle. Jeremy was walking to her right, and if he was feeling awkward, he was hiding it well. You good? Sana asked him. I'm all right, he responded. You? Peachy. Bank's right there. Might be able to salvage some dignity by the end of this walk. You have dignity? Not anymore. Quit your belly aching. We're here. Lisa opened her arms, and Sana dropped the 2 inches necessary to land flat-footed. The show she sent back did nothing, but her friend laughed, so she counted it as a win. They set off again, Lisa in between the other two, Jeremy closer to the road. It was quiet, not unnaturally so, but teetering on the edge. The park whispered as they walked past. Faye's magic nonsense. So that was something to avoid when it inevitably found a way past the park's iron fence. The trio speed walked until the greenery was out of sight. Chatter picked back up on the last few blocks to Sana's home. Jeremy and Lisa walked her to the door, then hung around on the steps while she unlocked it. Once she was past the threshold, she looked back and gave a little jerk of her head. Lisa grinned and fell into step behind her, while Jeremy followed with a bit more trepidation. Something to drink? She offered. Apple juice, please. Both girls turned to Jeremy, who blinked in surprise. Water? Luckily for you, I have both. Lee, can you get the glasses? Far left, bottom shelf. She had already crossed to the cupboards, so procuring cups was a moment's work. Sana grabbed juice, water, and seltzer from the fridge, kicked the door shut, and traded glasses for bottles. The trio chatted for a while about nothing in particular. Jeremy was a nice addition, for all that he was more Annalisa's friend than Sana's. She found herself liking him, if still not 100% comfortable yet. When it was time for them to get a move on, Sana walked Jeremy and Lisa to the door. Be careful, she half-begged them. I don't want to come into school tomorrow and hear news about how the two of you got shanked. Lisa's voice carried fond exasperation. We won't get shanked. It could happen, you never know. Faye's already manipulating the park, and you mentioned the increased likelihood of a mugging earlier, and we'll be fine, you worrywart. Lisa gave her a friendly nudge with her elbow. It's 2-1, and this guy's house is close to mine. We'll live. You better. If things get worse the way they seem to be, I don't want to know what could happen. Don't worry. Jeremy ran a hand through his hair and gave her an embarrassed grin. The CPD knows what it's doing, and the feds are experienced with this sort of thing. Things will go back to normal soon, and nothing will happen to any of us in the meantime. After he and Annalisa left, Sana released the bots, leaned her forehead against the door, and hugged herself. She wished she could believe him. 3 months passed. The federal team didn't come when flight risk stole a painting from the Calabria Museum, ripped the throats out of 2 guards, and ransomed the thing back for way too much money. The federal team didn't come when Pulse knocked out the windmill field south of the city and killed the power grid for days. The federal team didn't come when Doctors Como and Prasinus's latest lizard knocked down a high-rise and squished an animal control officer before it was euthanized. The federal team didn't come when Faye took over 2 blocks with greenery that used to belong to the park. The federal team didn't come, and didn't come, and didn't come. Lord Static's protege did.